And some more on the electric border borders. I mean, this has been alluded to by the president, and equally that's basically where the world is headed, especially at this point when we're all saying it's important that we go green. Just how much do you understand about the electric motorbikes, and is the country ready for that? Certainly a conversation that you do not want to miss out on. Very important that you interact with us even as you await to hear from the specialist. The hashtag is Disruptive Friday. I'll be sampling some of your comments as we continue with the broadcast, and the gentlemen are on standby for this very crucial conversation. I think it's only fair now that we cross over to that other side so that Eric Monene can introduce us to the guest, but of importance, equally get us to the conversation. We have the product manager of Micro Mobility Room, that is Lumbi Muchui, with Eric Monene. Eric, if you can hear me.
Well, thank you very much for that, Linda Alela. As you correctly put it, tonight we're going to talk about the future of e-mobility. The president has a very ambitious plan to ensure that the country has about 200,000 e-motorbikes by the end of 2024. Has the government done feasibility studies? Is it viable? That is the question we are asking tonight. Remember, you can be part of this conversation on our SMS line. Our SMS lines are open on 22047. That is our SMS line. You can text us. Twitter handle is at TV47 News. Mine personally is at Eric_Mnene. I'm going to be having this conversation with Lumbi Muchui, who is the product manager of micromobility at Rome, East Africa. Am I right?
Yes, you're right. Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for gracing this program tonight. We're going to have a conversation about that, and especially on the current news, that is the Finance Act being, the Court of Appeal has lifted the suspension of the Finance Act, and that is going to be implemented. So we want to talk about the excise duty on the electric motorbikes, and the cost of it. Is it still high? Is the long-term savings going to outweigh the initial investment for riders? And of course, we've also talked to our correspondents across the country. They've managed to engage some Kenyans, some motorbike riders who've given us their insights. I'm going to be sharing some of their views with you as well as with the viewer. But first, I want us to take a very, very, very short break. We'll be back with that conversation in a few. for investment in the technology sector through the establishment of 2 new subsidiaries. The company aims to support new and growing startups in the tech space through the strategic move. With the creation of these subsidiaries, Safaricom will have the opportunity to reinforce its role as a significant enabler of Kenya's tech community. The decision comes at a critical time when a funding shortage has led to the closure of numerous startups in the country. The company's CEO, Peter Ndego, emphasized the company's commitment to empowering the tech ecosystem, not only in Kenya, but also beyond its borders. This move will enable Safaricom to invest in both seed stage and growth stage startups. Now, you might have heard of WorldCoin. Now, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, that is ODPC, has issued a cautionary statement urging citizens to refrain from sharing their personal details with WorldCoin, a financial public utility that facilitates easy access to digital currencies without the involvement of third-party facilitators in transactions. The ODPC expressed concerns over the platform's processing of sensitive data, particularly personal information, in response to this. Now, the Commission has advised Kenyans to exercise caution and be vigilant when it comes to sharing their data with WorldCoin or any similar services. Additionally, the public has been encouraged to inquire about how their data will be utilized before agreeing to platforms, terms, and conditions. Now, this emphasizes the importance of being aware of the potential risks and implications associated with sharing personal information on such platforms. Well, from the latest on the tech scene in the country, time now to speak to Lumbi Muchuyu, who's a product manager, micromobility at From East Africa. Thank you so much, sir, once again for gracing our studios tonight. I want to talk about disruption on wheels. First of all, let's talk about the current news. As I just mentioned, the Court of Appeal has lifted the suspension on the Finance Act, I beg your pardon, which means that the implementation is going to be sooner rather than later. The implementation of that act will do away with the excise duty on electric motorcycles. But still, the cost, one will argue, is still high, isn't it?
It's true to argue that way, for sure. But at the moment you're looking at this tax reduction will be around from 35% to 10% in general of the amount of taxes that you're going to be paying for these vehicles. So that means that in general you're going to see around 40% in the cost of the EVs going down. Mm-hmm. To us, that's a very big factor, considering that the biggest cost to electric vehicles is the batteries. Now, if you go through the Finance Act, there's a very important part that they've added in there, that the excise duty and the tax and the VAT of the batteries is zero rated completely, mm-hmm. right? So that means that the most expensive component of any of these EVs is completely cut off. So we are very optimistic. We are very optimistic with this Finance Act. We are very optimistic with the fact that we'll be able to sell significantly more bikes. But that 40% margin is such a big margin for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, the government has a very ambitious plan, I have to say. 200,000 electric motorbikes by the end of next year. Who exactly is being targeted?
The average boda user. Mm-hmm. And you see, when it comes to the boda industry, over 80 to 85% of Kenyans are affected by it in one way or another. Okay. Be it the delivery of food, how does food get to your local sock or to your local market? How do people transport from one point to another? In many areas, the bikes are, any combustion engine bike is the primary means of transport for so many Kenyans. So already at the moment, we have over 1.7 million bikes on the road.
The conventional ones.
Exactly, the conventional ones. And only around 1 to 2% of that is EV. Mm-hmm. So there is a big area for us to cover. But the beauty is how the industry is shifting. We are shifting to more towards the local manufacturing. Hence our mission as Rome, our biggest goal has been, let's design, build right here in Africa. So by transitioning the shift from us importing vehicles from China, from Europe, from anywhere else in the world that they produce electric vehicles, we're like, let's produce it right here. By us producing it right here, it means that we are keeping it local, increasing employment opportunities, and as well as making sure that the cost is low and yet designed for this exact environment.
Mm-hmm. You've said that the industry is shifting, and that is something that is global. Globally, the trends are shifting towards the electric, the EV space. But still, is the infrastructure, because I'm sure you've had this conversation with the government or representatives in boardrooms, is the government also going to match up the speed that the industry is shifting with to ensure that we have proper infrastructure? Because look, many people say that these electric motorbikes carry lighter loads than the conventional motorbikes, and if it's true that you are really targeting the rural folk, maybe, who use motorbikes more often than the urban folk, don't you think that will be counterproductive?
It is a fair argument, and this is from the philosophy of the high importation of Chinese vehicles here in Kenya. So our design philosophy was that we need to design a product that works for us right here. And at the very beginning of this project, step number one was, let's go to the boda people. Let's ask them what exactly do they need? How do they use their bikes? And this was across the entire country. So by taking in that input from all the boda players that are out there, from the local delivery guy to the guy who's in the machinani who transports their maize to the market, those two have very varying inputs, and the key part became, how do we design for robustness and rigidity and rough terrain? And that became our design ethos. So every single part of the room air that we've designed is designed specifically to survive in this environment. You can carry a payload of up to 200 kilograms, which even on our Kenyan roads actually is, you're not supposed to carry that much on an electric bike or any bike per se. So by us designing specifically for this particular terrain, it means that we are ensuring that this bike lasts in the market for a very long time. And speaking of design ethos, there's also the fact of, as you mentioned, infrastructure. Infrastructure is such a big deal, especially when it comes to charging, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the way we decided to design this is with swappable batteries. Mm-hmm. Being able to remove the battery from the bike is one of the key aspects of how we designed this bike. So if you can carry it to your home where you have your charger, where you charge your phone, is exactly where you'd charge your bike as well. Where you go and wait at the stage where there's just a socket in the Mama Mboga's area or at the M-Pesa shop, you can easily go there with your portable charger, plug it in, and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm. You're saying you considered the views from the common boda riders before you came up with these designs, and I want us to just hear some of the views that we collected from the boda riders across the country, just to get what they have to say about your product and other products that are getting into the electric motorbike space. Well, as my producer gets to line up that video for us, there are also concerns that electricity is still expensive in this country. In fact, one viewer, or rather one follower of us who's commented on this topic was just sharing his views, saying that you spend 1,000 shillings and you get 28 units as the current market price of tokens. I think he was referring to the Kenya Power and Lighting Company. 1,000 gives you only 28 units, but electric motorcycles will be affordable. Kindly make me understand that.
Yeah, it's easy to compare the electric tariffs that we have right now in our domestic homes versus how our bike operates. Yeah. But for context, most EVs have a range of 100 kilometers. On our bike, we have a range of 80 kilometers on one battery, and with two batteries, you can get up to 160 kilometers. So what does it take for you to charge for 100 kilometers? For an EV, if you're charging at home or in our swapping stations, especially in our swapping stations, you can swap for 150 shillings. right? So for an EV vehicle, 100 kilometers, you get it for 150 shillings. If we look at the same for an internal combustion engine, most of the bikes on the road are around 150cc engines, and the consumptions of these vehicles is around 56 to 50 kilometers per liter. What that equates to is around 100, for 100 kilometers, around 2 point something thereabout liters of petrol. With the current prices, that's around 582 shillings, right? So we are talking about if I am using a combustion bike, a 150cc bike, it takes 580 shillings for me to go 100 kilometers.
All right.
But with a EV vehicle, I'm using 150 shillings, right? It's very easy to compare the tokens with what you see at home, but when it comes to using it on the electric vehicles themselves, you see that, first of all, efficiency is quite high, very high. Most of the power that you put into the electric battery will be used for your transportation.
Okay.
So 3 to 4 times the amount of profit bringing back home, to me, is a very sweet deal.
All right. So let's get to hear what the boda users have to say from across the country, the ones that you say you factored in their views before you came up with the disruptive design. Let's have a look.
Nimefanya kazi ya bodaboda kwa muda ya miaka 4 na nimesikia maajabu. Juzi kuna pikipiki ya stima ya kuchaji ambayo sijaiona tangu nizaliwe. So tunashanga hii ya kuchaji wakati naisha moto na uko na customer, utafanyaje ndio ichajiwe ndio upeleke customer mahali?
Hiyo pikipiki inahitaji kukuwe na stima. So hapa Turkana tutachajia wapi? Watu wenye wako reserve watafanya aje? So hiyo ni kitu ambayo yezi apply hapa Turkana County.
Pikipiki kama hiyo haitaenda masafa marefu kama ni ya kuchaji. So sisi tunapinga hiyo maneno ya rais.
Sana hizi makaunti ambayo ni marginalized community ambayo paka sasa hatujawahi pata stima kufika huko ni ngumu. Sasa kama iko na hiyo maana na pikipiki ya stima, I think inaweza apply for zile town kubwa kama Nakuru, Nairobi na Mombasa na Kisumu.
Ni kama itatusaidia kwa sababu ile maeneo tuko hakuna stima mahali popote.
Na tumeona za kutumia mafuta zina nguvu na zina uwezo wa kupanda milima misito kama maeneo haya ya Trans Nzoia.
Well, Mr. Lumbi Muchui.
Yes.
Some varied reactions there. But one main concern that seems to be common is the access to electricity. What do you have to say about that? And that's the reason why I asked if in your boardroom meetings with government representatives, the government has promised that it's going to match up the speed the technology is moving with in ensuring that we have proper infrastructure. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, infrastructure is quite a very big aspect to everything that we do. And I love those comments because when it comes to electric development and how we produce electricity, there are multiple ways in which the grid is mixed up. Already we know at the moment that over 90% of our grid is renewable. And the beauty of us being in sub-Saharan Africa, and especially around the equator, is the abundance of sunlight that we have, the abundance of wind that we have. We are not the only players in the market, and there are multiple other players in the market who are coming with very innovative charging solutions. Having a solar charging station is not out of the question. There are multiple players who pull this off. We do it ourselves, and other people will come into the market with similar solutions. So when it comes to charging in very remote areas, multiple players are willing to come into place and put in charging infrastructure that will allow local operators to be able to use this system. Multiple off-grid solutions have been proposed by multiple players. So it's not a matter of us waiting for charging infrastructure to be there for us to have EVs. It's not a chicken and egg situation. It's more of the demand will meet the supply.
Okay.
So the moment, especially now that even the government, KPLC, has reduced the tariffs on tokens for charging. So there is a 50% reduction if you're charging specifically for EV. So that reduction by itself also incentivizes more players to come into the market who will build more infrastructure and who will allow more charging to happen even in the most remotest areas in the country.
All right. So the proponents of e-mobility say that once more people embrace the EVs, electric vehicles, we are going to see carbon emissions going down. But then again, there's the issue of electronic pollution. There is e-waste pollution also going up. Have you factored that in?
Yes, we have. So at the moment, we're looking at 97% reduction in emissions, right? That by itself is quite a massive feat, right? And again, as to my earlier point of the grid being 92% renewable, we are basically the country that's best suited to shift to EV. When it comes to e-waste, most vehicles, when it comes to EVs, the biggest concern is always with the lithium-ion batteries, right? But there are ways in which we work around this. When it comes to an EV vehicle's battery, it's always about what usable capacity it has. When it comes to vehicles, they require very high capacity and require a lot of high power output. But that's not the same for solar installation systems. That's where Second Life comes in. And Second Life has been a big factor in how we are looking into doing our business going into the future. Most of the players in the market are also looking at it in that way, that by us developing electric vehicles, it means that we are creating a secondary industry that's solar. And by us creating a secondary industry of solar, it means that we keep our grid even more green and more efficient. So there is that fear with lithium ions and them not being able to be used later on, but there are multiple solutions in us doing this. There's also recycling of these lithium ion cells. It's possible for us to extract up to 70% of the materials within a lithium ion battery, which can be used to develop even more lithium ion cells.
Well, that is one problem, a new problem that we might face. There's also another problem that might come with this because we are in a new era. We have now new terms, things like range anxiety. You know, this is the issue when a driver of an EV or a rider of an EV gets quite anxious because the battery levels are going low and the next charging port is probably hundreds of kilometers, for instance. How do you think this applies to electric bikes? And do you think maybe there are some ways to mitigate range anxiety for riders?
This is where design plays a big role in the EV sector. So designing an EV that will be used by a boda that doesn't have a removable battery is basically designing to, have range anxiety as the main agenda. It will basically, the boda guy will be living from charging to charging station, always on a quest of looking for the next charging point, right? But we do have a lot of bodas spend a lot of time on the stage itself. That alone opens a big range of design possibilities for us. One key aspect of us pursuing this was, first of all, have a removable battery, a battery that a user can easily carry and take it to the nearest socket close to them. The second aspect is designing the bike itself to be able to house a portable charger. So whenever you're able to get a portable, or rather an outlet, an electricity outlet, you can discharge your bike there at any particular point. And the most important part is swapping stations as well. So being able to go to a roam hub with your depleted battery, swap it for a 30-second process or even a 1-minute process if you have M-Pesa issues while you're doing it. And as soon as that's done, you have a fresh battery and continue with your journey. And this is the similar structure with how combustion engines work, right? We've built so many petrol stations that range anxiety isn't a thing. Surprisingly, in the 1900s, range anxiety was a thing with combustion vehicles. So going back to your initial point of charging infrastructure, we do need to build a very robust network, a very robust system of charging systems, charging networks, empowering people to be able to buy these chargers, have them in their M-Pesa shops, in their kibandas, and be like, yeah, when you're coming for lunch, you can charge your bike. It's all about creating that infrastructure and creating that awareness that this is not a very foreign concept, but a very simple thing that we can all embrace as a country.
Well, as it is right now, as the situation is right now, is it possible for a rider who uses a bike from your company to get their battery swapped in another station? Say a station that does not belong to your company, the interchangeability, is it possible?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So this is what all players in the EV industry here in Kenya are trying to do. We are aware of the large complexity of the market itself. And
so no one is trying to create a monopoly?
No, I don't think anyone is trying to create a monopoly. The market is so big and so massive. And most players in this industry are actually pushed by the need to create the solutions right here in Africa, right here in sub-Saharan Africa. Unfortunately, we here in Africa are the most disproportionately affected by global warming, right? So we are the ones who are going to experience the worst of it in the soonest possible. And yet we are the ones who have the least amount of impact to global warming. So that's why we are really pushing and really urging the push to all of this. So yeah, we are all holding hands together in this. We are all trying to make sure that we have the right mindset and the right infrastructure in place for us to be able to do that interchangeability across the country.
Finally, what about the spare parts? How easily accessible are they?
So the difference between a combustion engine vehicle and an electric vehicle is that there is a massive difference in the number of moving parts that you need to replace. So unlike our combustion engine, we are talking, you don't have gearboxes, you do not have air filters, oil filters, spark plugs, all of these parts that are you normally need to be quite aware of and look for spare parts for, they are no longer a thing within the EV ecosystem. And when it comes to the things that now are in the EV itself, be it shocks, be it wheels, be it chains, all of these are parts that we've designed specifically to make sure that they are compatible with what's in the market itself. So if you take any of our vehicles to your local mechanic, to your local auto body shop, or wherever you go for your boda repairs, they will be able to find those spare parts in the shop next door.
And I can't let you leave before asking you this. I have a question here on our SMS line. Someone is asking, there were plans to swap the conventional bikes with the electronic bikes. How is that? What's the plan? Is there some top-up that one has to give for them to get finally that EV?
Yeah, it's something that we explored thoroughly for a long time. And it became quite difficult because when it comes to combustion vehicles, they come in all shapes and sorts and forms, right? Okay. So every single time someone comes to us to convert their vehicle, it's basically a custom job every single time. So again, going back to how do we create a system that allows every boda guy to get a bike? We're talking about 1.6 million bodas on the road versus the currently 1% of that that's currently electric. So if we want to shift that transition, we saw it best that instead of someone coming with their combustion vehicle that requires a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort to convert to electric, let's just give them the solution at the get-go, as soon as they need a new bike. And unfortunately, most of the combustion engine vehicles have such a short lifespan. They don't last 2-3 years on the road. So it's more of like, let's create a product, let's create something that's specifically meant for the Kenyan sector, specifically meant for the African sector, and specifically meant to outlast any other combustion vehicle.
Well, thank you very much, Lumbi Muchui, Product Manager of Micromobility at Rome, East Africa. We'll probably have this conversation some other time as you keep on penetrating the market. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that has been Lumbi Muchui, who's a Product Manager of Micromobility at Rome, East Africa. Remember, that is the company that the President said was keen on ensuring that Kenya has around 200,000 motorbikes by next year, that is 2024. And I understand that the president was also there. He graced the event to open the plant. It's the biggest plant of its kind in East and Central Africa. We are yet to see how that is going to pan out. Lumbi Muchui, of course, is a big proponent of EVs, that is electric vehicles, and e-mobility, that also includes electric motorbikes. There's the issue of the excise duty on electric motorcycles now will be removed after the Court of Appeal lifted the suspension on the Finance Act. And so that is also something that we're going to be following up on. And does the long-term saving outweigh the initial investment? Well, according to the proponents of e-bikes, that is going to happen. But well, that is also something that it's a wait-and-see situation. We'll get to see if that really will happen. Linda?
We should perhaps begin another conversation now that I'm seated here. I must admit that was quite, which is to appreciate what you have done.
Who, me? No, I'm just a journalist.
The guest.
Oh, yeah, the guest.
Certainly. That was quite informative, right? Pretty much short and sweet.
Yeah.
There's more to learn, I realize.
Yeah. Learn something new every day.
And the beauty of it is that we do not stop to learn, and we always appreciate technology. Yes. So
would you consider swapping your car or bike for an electric one?
Well, if that's where the world is headed, why not?
Okay.
Somehow convinced, right? Okay, well, we must admit that it was good having you this evening, and equally immense feedback. We appreciate that. It's exactly what time?
It is 17
minutes past the top of the hour. I think we have to say kwaheri and look forward to see you again.